In today's world where soft skills are gaining an upper hand, self-confidence is an absolutely necessary skill to build. The very interesting thing about self-confidence is it's like a cycle. You often wonder whether it's the chicken or the egg that comes first. And the reason why I say this is self-confidence determines the way people respond to you, the way people treat you, the way people view you. And so it then kind of means that you have to propel yourself forward first to become a confident person. Then you can get the commensurate treatment that you want from people. As long as you have it internally and you project it outward externally, you have a higher chance of getting the sort of reputation or feel or energy or vibe that checks the box. So this is a very interesting topic to be talking about because self-confidence is extremely important. And I must have hinted it to you earlier. You have that responsibility to become a self-confident person. You shouldn't be waiting for people to treat you as a person who has confidence before you then convince yourself that you have confidence and start acting accordingly. It's first inward outwards before it is outward inwards. But as long as it is inward outwards, eventually the outward inward part will fall into place. So finally, let's talk about self-confidence. What does it take to build self-confidence? I'll tell you that in a minute, but first, let's define what self-confidence is. Simply put, self-confidence is one's own trust in their own abilities and one's reliability in their skills and in what they are capable of. So self-confidence is very directly related to self-esteem. It is very likely that if you have a high self-esteem or you have a great self-esteem, you're going to be self-confident commensurately. Over to the interesting gist. What does it take to build self-confidence? The first point I'll be sharing with you is, number one, it takes skills, expertise, and excellence to build self-confidence. You naturally gain self-confidence when you know what you're doing, when you have an in-depth knowledge of your area of specialization or expertise. Let's say you're a lawyer, or let's say you're a graphic designer. It's much easier for you to show up confidently in a room and own the room. It's much easier for you to show up confidently and pitch your value to people who have never met you before and exude self-confidence when you really know what you're doing. So in that sense, you've got to give yourself the time and you've got to put in the hard work to build up the expertise and the excellence culture that qualifies you to become an expert. Because the moment you know a lot about something, naturally the self-confidence flows. When you think about what really makes people less confident, it's fear. Fear of what? What if I don't know what to say? What if I'm saying something dumb? What if I miss Yan? What if people think my ideas are stupid? What if people think I'm not that good at it? And so they have that wobbly feeling internally, that wobbly esteem internally, because they're not confident in the fact that they have the track record or they have built up the muscle that qualifies them to be an expert at something. So they're always second guessing themselves. They're always doubting themselves. It then follows suit that if you go ahead and strengthen your skills and get better at what you do, you will walk into every room and own it confidently because you know exactly what to say and when to say it. The second tip I want to share with you as to how you can build up your self-confidence is validating yourself regularly. This seems obvious, but we live in a world where people are constantly looking for external validation. In fact, I dare argue, with the advent of social media, it keeps getting worse because we're constantly online consuming the highlights of people's lives, and we think that that is all about their lives. And because of that, we're starting to feel more and more stupid. We're starting to feel more and more worthless. We're starting to feel more and more like our lives don't matter or our lives don't worth anything. But my friends, you have to take the personal responsibility to constantly validate yourself. No matter how small you think your wins are, keep validating those wins. No matter how immaterial you think your strengths and your abilities are, keep taking the time to validate that, because that's what builds up your reserve of self-confidence. It's not something that is going to magically happen overnight because you listen to Regina speak or because you go to a workshop where they teach you how to hack self-confidence. At the end of the day, the work is still yours to be done, and that work has to be done consistently to provide results. Speaking of consistently, the first place you need to start with validating yourself is changing your internal dialogue with yourself, changing your internal view and your mindset about yourself. There are people who, when they make mistakes, they say, "Oh, you're so stupid. That's why you keep making these mistakes." Other people don't make these mistakes. You're so hard on yourself. You are so critical with yourself. You're like your own biggest enemy. You're always attacking yourself internally. And that reflects in your self-confidence, because you show up, and when you continue to doubt yourself in your mind, you're training your brain to believe that you're not reliable. You're training your brain to believe that you're not capable of much. And so it just flows from that and reflects in the external, meaning that, you don't think you're able to do anything well. You don't think you're able to do anything good. But first, you have to trace it back to your internal dialogue with yourself. Be easy on yourself. Be your own self cheerleader. And you don't expect anyone to love and believe in you if you don't love and believe in yourself. So even though you make mistakes, as we all do, your internal dialogue matters. Yes, take the time to identify where you've made a mistake and put in an effort to make sure you don't make the same mistakes. But don't be critical of yourself. Don't use negative language on yourself. Don't call yourself silly names in your mind. And there are a lot of us that do that. But that needs to stop if you're serious about building self-confidence. The third tip that I want to be sharing with you today, which is kind of tied to the second tip that I shared, is you've got to work on your mindset, your belief systems, and your thought patterns. This is very important, because what you believe about yourself eventually reflects in the quality of life that you have. If you're not a very self-confident person, it is not hard for a person like me to see that you don't have the highest quality of mindset, or you don't have the best quality of mindsets. You're probably entertaining mindsets about yourself that are not serving you or serving your future. And so it's very important that if you want to become a person who grows in self-confidence, you've got to clean out your toxic mindsets. You've got to clean out the lies that you believe about yourself, And I particularly want to speak to those who have past trauma or past experiences. We can never overemphasize the role that this plays in the quality of adults that we turn out to become. And so children who have dealt with some sort of trauma, one parent left, another parent left, or, their parents were always fighting, or their parents never saw the value in them. Their parents never validated them as children. Their parents were the kinds of parents where, when they came back home with a report card and if they weren't the first, or they didn't have the highest grades, their parents would say, "Oh, what about the person that has the highest grades? Do they have two heads?" You find that people have experienced this level of trauma, and it has innately damaged them to the point where they don't think there is any good in them. They don't believe in themselves. They don't believe in their abilities. And so for my folks in that category, you have to work a little harder, to change your mindset, because your past experiences are so vivid in your mind that it's so hard to erase those things. It's so hard to see yourself differently than the things that you were told that you are. Maybe it's not even your parents. Maybe it's past relationships, romantic and platonic. It's the people you've had in your life in the past who constantly downplayed you or downgraded you, or constantly said words to you that made you feel like you didn't worth much, or you don't have meaning or importance. Listen, my friends, you've got to take back that control from other people. You can't keep letting them control your life and control your outcomes and your experiences. That's too much of your personal power that you're giving to someone else. And so I want you to take back that power and begin to retrain your mind, retrain your thought processes, your mindsets, your beliefs, the things that you're believing about yourself. Heal from your trauma if you need to. Speak to a therapist, speak to a coach, speak to a counselor, whoever can help you walk through that healing journey. Do it, because that's the best thing for you to do for yourself. And that's the major highway to get on the self-confidence path. The fourth point or tip that I'll be sharing with you today is, are you ready? Be mindful of your association. Stop associating with toxic, hateful people who continue to project their own issues on you, because that can definitely take a hit at your self-confidence. If you keep spending time, you keep being codependent on people who are not good for you, people who are bad for you, then you're not going to be able to build your own self-confidence. If they keep talking negative around you, even if they're not talking about you, but they're always talking negative about themselves or about other people, those are toxic friendships and associations. And you don't want to always put yourself in that kind of situation, because at a subconscious level, it's a rewiring your brain and your mindsets and your belief systems to start thinking at that low quality place. It's rewiring your brain to start to think at that very, stinking level, what they call stinking thinking. This is a typical example of what it is. And I'm going to touch on a very sensitive subject, but sometimes the toxic people can be family members. Unfortunately, this is the case with a lot of people. We want family members to be safe for us. We want family members to be people we can share our hearts with. And because we desperately desire this, sometimes we can't see when family members are really, in fact, the people that are destroying us or that are toxic for us. And if that's the case for you, I want you to tell yourself the truth. Be honest with yourself if your family member is bad for you, and do the best that you can to separate yourself from them as much as possible. It may not be complete, but to the extent that you can, you want to minimize time spent around family members that are bad for you, that constantly diminish you, that constantly project their issues on you, that constantly talk you down, or that are just toxic people to be around. This includes when they're intimidated of you or intimidated of the light that you carry, and they feel like the best way to protect themselves or their, response, a natural response, is to try to dim your light so that they can be comfortable. You want to stay away from people like that. All right, the fifth point that I want to share with you today as to how to build your self-confidence is challenge yourself to do the hard things. Listen, nothing builds up your self-confidence reserve like when you do things that you initially thought you could never do. When you conquer challenges and surmount mountains that you never thought you could surmount. Those kinds of wins will definitely give your confidence a boost. So challenge yourself to do hard things, and not just that, but document it so that you can constantly remind yourself that you've been there and that you've done that. The more you do those things, the more you retrain your brain to start telling you a different story about yourself. All right, the sixth and the final point I'll be sharing with you, which I kind of touched on in the previous point, is, keep a track record of your successes and document your wins. I know people who come into the new year with an empty jar, and every time they win at something, they write it on a note and throw it into the jar. By the end of the year, the jar is almost full, and those are the things that help them to continue to believe in themselves, and those are the things that boost their confidence in themselves. So feel free to try it because it works. I think sometimes the reason why we don't think that we're good enough is because, quite frankly, we're not documenting how well we've done in the past. We do good things, but they're temporary. After a while, we forget about them and we just kind of fall back to the usual way of thinking. Meanwhile, if we will document those things can be our liberation. Those things can be the things that break the bondages for us, because it's proof, it's evidence that we've done the very things that we thought that we couldn't do. All right, my friends, thank you so much for watching this video. My name is Regina Irobe. I am a life and transformation coach. And if you're not yet a family member, feel free to hit that subscribe button and subscribe to this channel, because I'm very committed to sharing with you the resources, the thinking, and the tools for you to experience life and personal breakthroughs and for you to excel. I hope you liked this video. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up and share with someone you care about. Until the next time, bye.